On November 15, 2025, at exactly 7:12 in the morning, the sky over southern Ukraine became a battlefield. Not for territory, not for symbols, but for time. At low altitude, barely 150 meters above the marshlands of the Dnipro River, the Ukrainian Air Force F-16 tore westward through the cold morning air. Ahead of it, cutting silently through the mist, was a single metallic shadow, a Russian Kh-101 cruise missile. And behind both of them, unseen but already awake, a Russian S-400 air defense system in Crimea was beginning to smell blood. This is the story of a mission measured in seconds, where physics, instinct, and human limits collided.
Today, we're jumping right into the cockpit to break down an absolutely lethal game of high-altitude chess. This is a world where your main opponent is physics itself, and a single move, well, that's the difference between mission accomplished and becoming a smoking crater.
The 101 was not an aircraft. It did not think. It did not hesitate. 6 meters long, packed with fuel and explosives, it followed its programmed path with mechanical certainty. Its destination was a residential apartment block west of Kherson. No pilot. No emotion. No second thoughts. If it reached its target, dozens of civilians would never see the sunrise. The F-16 pilot, callsign Viper, knew this. And he knew he had less than 1 minute to change the outcome.
You know, this quote right here, it just perfectly sums up what we're talking about today. We are entering a realm that moves way faster than human thought, where your entire existence is measured in tiny, tiny fractions of a second. So what we're going to do is follow one pilot on one harrowing mission. And through his eyes, we're going to try and understand the tactics, the tech, and the frankly impossible choices that define what it means to fight in the skies today.
Viper kept his aircraft pressed low, using the riverbed like a trench carved by nature itself. As long as he stayed below the radar horizon, the surrounding hills shielded him from Russian air defense systems across the river. At 900 kilometers per hour, trees, power lines, and tall poplars blurred into meaningless streaks. He was no longer flying consciously. Every correction came before thought. Throttle, stick, breath. The aircraft felt less like a machine and more like a nervous extension of his own body. But terrain masking was a temporary illusion. Physics always collects its debt.
All right, let's set the scene. Our story kicks off with a Ukrainian pilot, callsign Viper, strapped into his F-16. And let me tell you, this is no routine patrol. He is actively hunting. Okay, take a look at these numbers, because this is where it gets wild. Viper's screaming along at 900 kilometers an hour. But check out his altitude, 150 meters. To put that in perspective, that's like flying the length of a football field every second, while being lower than the top of the Eiffel Tower. And he's chasing a cruise missile that's headed for a civilian area. So the big question is, how is he not getting lit up by every radar in the region? Well, he's using a really clever trick. He's exploiting the fact that the Earth is round. By hugging the terrain this tightly, he's literally using the curve of the planet and the river valley as a shield. It is his only protection out there. And that just gets to the heart of it, right? The sheer mental load here is insane. At this speed, at this altitude, conscious thought is a luxury you just don't have. Every tiny adjustment is pure reflex, drilled into him over thousands of hours. One wrong move, one split second of hesitation, and he becomes part of the landscape.
The sound in Viper's headset changed. Not a warning, not a threat, a steady, confident tone. The IM-9X Sidewinder under his wing had locked onto the heat of the Kh-101's engine. The missile left the rail with a sharp crack, its white plume slicing through the air. Seconds later, the cruise missile disintegrated into an orange fireball and crashed harmlessly into an empty stretch of land. The threat was gone. The celebration lasted 1 second.
And then he hears it, that beautiful, constant hiss in his headset. That's the sound of victory. His Sidewinder missile has a solid lock on the cruise missile's engine. He fires. The Kh-101 vanishes in a ball of fire. Threat neutralized. But this is where his real problem begins. You see, that explosion, that heroic act that just saved who knows how many lives, it basically just rang the dinner bell for every single enemy air defense system in the area. In an instant, Viper has gone from being the hunter to being the hunted.
As Viper maneuvered to avoid debris, he glanced at his radar warning receiver. The screen was no longer quiet. Slow, rhythmic pulses appeared. The Big Bear radar of an S-400 battery in Crimea was sweeping the horizon. Long pulse, wide search, medium pulse, suspicion, short pulse, fixation. The language was unmistakable. He had been detected. And under his wings, 2 AASM Hammer bombs continued their automated checks, repeating the same cold message every few seconds. GPS locked. Inertial navigation aligned. Motors armed. The irony was brutal. The Kh-101 had never been his primary mission. Viper was not carrying half a ton of precision-guided bombs for a patrol. His real target was 40 kilometers ahead, a drone command center in Hola Prystan, a hub coordinating surveillance and attacks that had been bleeding Ukrainian positions for weeks. Intercepting the cruise missile had been the right decision. But it came at a price. Fuel burned. Stealth lost. Surprise gone. He was now deep in hostile radar coverage, with limited time and no easy way out. The fuel gauge showed 1,900 kilograms remaining. At low altitude in dense river air, the engine drank fuel at an unforgiving rate. 12 minutes. That was all he had, before the mission turned into a glide toward oblivion. But fuel wasn't the real problem. Altitude was. To release the AASM hammers, he needed height, and climbing meant exposure. 8 kilometers separated safety from suicide. Viper pushed the throttle forward. At 7:15, the F-16 crossed an invisible line. As the altimeter passed 300 meters, the cockpit exploded into electronic chaos. 6 separate radar emitters locked onto him at once. Then one went silent. The most dangerous one, the gravestone radar of the S-400. Silence meant focus. The tone in his headset became continuous and violent. A firing solution. 38 kilometers from the launcher. Inside the lethal window. 8 seconds. That was how long human reaction time bought him. Viper made a choice no flight school would ever endorse. If he couldn't hide, he would overwhelm. Afterburner. Full power. Vertical climb. The F-16 surged upward like a rocket, its radar signature exploding across Russian screens. Inside the S-400 command vehicle, the target appeared suddenly. Fast, bright, chaotic. The operator didn't wait for perfection. He launched. 2 8-meter missiles roared into the sky. The climb was brutal. The G-suit crushed Viper's legs and abdomen, forcing blood back toward his brain. Colors drained from the world, leaving only grainy sepia. Peripheral vision vanished. Only the artificial horizon remained, spinning like a broken compass. At 4,500 meters, balanced on the edge of consciousness, Viper stabilized the aircraft for 2 seconds. That was enough.
And folks, this is the big bad that hurt him, the S-400. It is one of the most advanced, most feared long-range air defense systems on the planet. Its massive Big Bear search radar is now sweeping the sky, and you can bet it's looking for the source of that explosion. It's looking for him. Because here's the thing, that cruise missile, it was never his primary mission. His F-16 is carrying 2 huge AASM Hammer smart bombs. His real target is a Russian drone command center. Taking out that cruise missile was a moral choice, a target of opportunity. But it's a choice that came with an enormous tactical price. So let's just tally up the cost of that good deed, shall we? 1, element of surprise, totally gone. 2, he's burned a critical amount of fuel in that low-level chase. And 3, he's been dragged way, way off his planned route, deep into hostile territory. He is completely exposed. Pilots have a name for this kind of situation. They call it the geometry of death. It's this terrifying puzzle of angles, speed, and altitude. And if you get the math wrong, you die. Viper is now smack in the middle of that puzzle. And this is his impossible choice. Option A, stay low. If he stays glued to the ground, he's probably safe from the S-400. But he can't launch his bombs from down there. They need altitude to glide to the target. So, mission fails. Option B, climb high. If he pulls up to launch the bombs, the S-400 will see him in a heartbeat and fire. Certain death. So, what do you do?
So, inside the cockpit, he's listening. It's like listening to a predator breathe. First, you hear the long, slow pulses of the search radar. Beep, beep. It's just looking. Then the pulses get faster. Beep, beep, beep. It's noticed something. It's focusing. And then you hear the sound you never, ever want to hear.
A solid, unbroken, high-pitched scream tearing through his headset. That's not a warning anymore. That's the sound of your own obituary being written in real time. The S-400 has a firing solution. Missiles are coming. Faced with two terrible options, Viper does what the great ones do. He invents a third. He's going to attempt something so risky, so against the rules, it's called the vertical gambit, and he has a terrifyingly small window to pull it off. The idea here is, well, it's pretty wild. Instead of trying to be a ghost, he's going to be a firework. He's going to be the biggest, loudest, most confusing thing on their radar screens. It is the tactical equivalent of shouting in a library, a desperate move to overwhelm their sensors and hope he can slip through the chaos. 8 seconds. That's it. That is the entire window he has to play with. From the moment of that hard lock, that's the estimated time it takes for a human operator on the other end to confirm the target and push the fire button. 8 seconds to live or die. He slams the throttle into afterburner, yanks the stick into his gut, and his F-16 rockets straight up. He's aiming for an apex of 4,500 meters. That's almost 3 miles vertically, where, at the very peak, he has to be completely upside down to release his bombs correctly. But here's the genius part. He doesn't just go straight up. That's suicide. The S-400's missiles don't fly to where you are. They fly to where their computers predict you're going to be. So Viper executes a climbing barrel roll, a corkscrew towards the heavens, turning his flight path into a mathematical nightmare for the enemy targeting computers. Right at the top of that insane, spiraling climb, hanging upside down with enemy missiles screaming up at him, he releases the bombs. His part of the dance is over. The package is delivered. Now it's all up to the technology. To survive, Viper has to get back down to the dirt fast. He rolls over and dives, pulling an unbelievable 9.5 Gs, a force that would make most people black out instantly. And remember that bureaucracy of physics? It now saves his life. The S-400 missiles, rocketing upwards, simply can't overcome their own momentum. They can't make that turn. They overshoot, chasing a ghost. And meanwhile, as Viper is fighting for his life, the 2 Hammer bombs are on their own automated journey. 2 seconds after release, their rocket motors kick in. 5 seconds, their infrared seekers wake up and lock onto the drone center. 15 seconds, they're in a terminal dive, going supersonic. 16 seconds, impact. The first bomb blows a hole in the roof. The second follows it inside and detonates. Target destroyed. So it really brings us back to this one final question, doesn't it? The F-16, the smart bombs, the S-400, they're all incredible pieces of technology. Absolute marvels of engineering. But when everything, and I mean everything, came down to that 8-second window between life and death, was it the machine that won the day? Or was it human instinct?
The bombs ran their final checks. GPS confirmed. INS aligned. Infrared seekers cooled. Target coordinates loaded. Viper pressed the release. 500 kilograms dropped away. The F-16 leapt forward, suddenly lighter. And instantly, it became prey again. He rolled inverted and dove. 9.5 Gs. Straight through the sound barrier. The S-400 missiles had predicted a high ballistic path. They couldn't adapt fast enough. Their guidance systems recalculated and failed. They overshot, lost the solution, and self-destructed in the thin air above. Geometry had won. Far behind Viper, the 2 Hammer bombs reached their apex and began their terminal glide. Their rocket motors ignited. Infrared seekers scanned the ground. Among thermal noise and shadows, one shape burned bright. The House of Culture. Perfect match. The first bomb punched through the roof and detonated inside. The second followed into the foundations. The pressure erased everything. The building vanished. In Moscow, drone operator screens went dark one by one. Connection lost. Error 404. Command center not found. Viper checked his fuel. 400 kilograms. Enough. This is Viper. Package delivered. Returning to base. The reply came calm. Copy. In transmission. That morning, Russian drone operations in the south were forced into an unplanned reorganization, and the sky over Kherson grew quiet again.